No, wait. It matters. Let's not forget what has been happening almost 2 years now, right? Putin's war right, but that has caused inflation. That has caused prices to go up, right? And so the president took action to make sure gas prices went down, which they have, right?
This is my video update on this Saturday afternoon, December the 16th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with a couple of articles from CNN, which highlight the general panic in the United States and in the European Union over the collapse of Project Ukraine. And let's start things off with an article from CNN World with the title, Ukraine has had a terrible week. Blame the US and the EU. Blame the US and the EU. Just don't blame Zelensky and his administration. So the article says that Zelensky has had a truly abysmal week. His team trumpeted the symbolic victory of EU accession negotiations, and he called it a sign history is made by those who don't get tired of fighting for freedom. But for actual EU membership, the war has to end, and it has to end with Ukraine remaining a viable nation. Neither of these things are currently guaranteed. Kiev consistently points to past successes and future goals. They have reclaimed about half the territory Russia took last year. They have damaged its Black Sea presence strategically. They have a plan for 2024, Zelensky said. But it is a secret. It's a secret, Zelensky said. Yeah, they've damaged Russia's Black Sea fleet. What a bunch of bollocks, man. Oh, they're stuck on territory. They're stuck on this territory narrative. They still haven't figured out that Russia is demilitarizing Ukraine. They're not taking territory yet. They're not so consumed with territorial gains, but because the collective West is consumed with territorial gains, because territorial gains equal money to Project Ukraine, they've projected their ambitions, their goals of territorial gains. They projected that onto Russia. Even Putin yesterday, during 2 days ago, during his Q&A, even Putin told everybody, told the world that what Russia does is they allow Ukraine to advance, and then they annihilate the Ukraine military. He said it. I mean, he couldn't have been more clearer yesterday. He's like, we allowed Ukraine to set up a bridgehead in Kherson. We could have pushed the military out, but me and Gerasimov said, let them advance, let them create the bridgehead, and we'll annihilate them, and let them continue to feed soldiers into that bridgehead. It makes it easy on us to annihilate these soldiers. And Putin said, this is horrible. He's like, I understand this sounds horrible, and it is horrible, but this is the reality of war. Putin said it in his Q&A. Could not have been more clear as to what the overriding Russian strategy has been throughout this conflict, which has been to annihilate the opposing army. But they still can't get to this whole territory thing out of their head. Anyway, Zelensky, he's like, it's a secret. It's all a secret. Give me 61 billion, but my plan is a secret. Right. I wonder what that secret is. I wonder if that secret involves Zelensky trying to figure out a way to get out of Ukraine. I wonder if that's part of the secret plan. We know that a whole bunch of Ukrainian MPs have already left Kiev or are trying to leave Kiev. We know that because the head of Zelensky's party, the Servants for the People's Party, he had to actually block MPs from traveling outside of the country, from leaving the country, because the parliament has already lost something like 30 parliament members who have just packed up their bags, and they see the writing on the wall, and they're like, they're getting the F out of Dodge. So I wonder if that's part of Zelensky's secret plan. Give me 61 billion, America, What's your plan, Zelensky? What's your plan for victory? It's a secret. 61 billion, yes. Secret plan. Super secret plan. So there's panic. This article basically is just highlighting the panic. The author of this article is panicking. It's the US and the EU that has not done enough. They haven't done enough to support Ukraine. That's basically what the article is saying. And because Project Ukraine is collapsing, it's the EU and the US's fault. 200, 300, 400, 500 billion, not enough. Not enough. Emptying out their weapon stockpiles, not enough. More. We need to give more to Project Ukraine. Zelensky administration? Nah, they're not to blame for any of this. Zelensky's not to blame for any of this. He had a peace deal. He had the Minsk Accords. Then he had a peace deal after the first month of the special military operation. But he tore up that peace deal on the advice of Boris the Clown. He actually believed Boris Johnson. That tells you how Zelensky is. To actually believe Boris Johnson. If Boris came to me and was like, hey, we'll give you all the money, all the weapons, just keep fighting, I would have looked Boris in the eye and I would have been like, yeah, right, I'm going to believe you. Yeah, right. Sorry, I'll take this peace deal that the Russians have given me and that we've signed, this framework for peace. I'll take it because it is super favorable to us. But nope. Zelensky decided to go with Boris Johnson and to fight on. But he's not to blame for any of this. Anyway, CNN Politics, they put out an article with the title, Western Officials Warn Ukraine is Certain to Fail Against Russia if the U.S. Doesn't Provide More Aid. But I thought that CNN was telling us just 2 days ago, wasn't CNN telling us that Russia has lost 87% of its military in Ukraine? Its pre-war army, 87% wiped away. Now all of a sudden, 2 days later, CNN is telling us that Ukraine's going to fail if no more money, no more weapons are given to Project Ukraine. Incredible stuff. Let's see. This article says, there is no guarantee of success with us, but they are certain to fail without us, a senior U.S. military official said. Listen to that quote from the U.S. military official. There is no guarantee of success with us, but they are certain to fail without us. Right. That sounds like a real good investment. That sounds like something you want to put 61 billion into. We don't know if they're going to win if we give them 61 billion, but they're going to definitely fail if we don't give them 61 billion. This is like the definition of sunk cost. The article goes on to say that the most immediate concern is the impact on Ukraine's ongoing counteroffensive. This shows you how delusional these people are. They still believe that Ukraine has a counteroffensive going on. Sorry, let me continue. The most immediate concern is the impact on Ukraine's ongoing counteroffensive in the east and south, where Ukrainian forces have struggled to make significant forward progress even when U.S. support was still coming. If looking at taking and holding further territory, said one European diplomat, it is hard to see how that could succeed without continued U.S. support. Still struggling to make forward progress. They struggled to make forward progress. How about they failed? How about the counteroffensive failed? How about the Russians defeated the NATO proxy army? How about the counteroffensive is over? Nah, it struggled to make forward progress. Ukraine's ongoing counteroffensive in the east and south. And then the European diplomat's like, if we're talking about further progress or holding territory, If the U.S. doesn't give money, I just don't see it. Well, how about you, Mr. European diplomat? How about if your country, whatever country you're from, how about if you give them money and forget about the U.S.? How about if you give them money? But no, no, no. In this article, the European diplomats that were interviewed in this article, they make it very clear. Without the United States, there is no Project Ukraine. We can't do it without the United States. That's what this article is all about. It highlights the freakout in Europe, in the European Union, in the halls of Brussels. It highlights the freakout that is taking place if and when the U.S. ditches Project Ukraine and leaves the EU holding the bag. And they're starting to freak out. More broadly, Western officials fear the loss or further delay of U.S. support will impact aid from its allies. On Friday, Ukraine suffered another blow when Hungary blocked further European Union aid, though talks on the issue are expected to resume in January. The news underlined the scale of the challenge facing Kiev, and many fear that if the U.S. fails to continue providing support, European nations will follow. Without the U.S., the EU can't do anything. Without the U.S., the EU can't do anything. It's pretty sad and pathetic when you think about it. How many countries are there in the European Union? 27? 27 countries in the European Union. And they're 100% dependent on the United States of America. 100%. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Without the U.S., they are lost. And you know who I feel sorry for? I feel sorry for, like, the American taxpayer. I mean, without the U.S., Europe just collapses. They're nothing without the United States. Oh, please, America, please don't stop your support for Ukraine. Please don't stop. Please, 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 America, don't leave us. Don't leave me. Don't leave me, America. You see, they talk tough. They talk tough when they have the U.S. standing behind them. But now that the U.S. might not be standing behind them, they're getting worried, because if the U.S. ditches Project Ukraine, well, the EU might just have to actually talk to the Russians. God forbid the European Union actually has to talk to the Russians and has to respect the Russians and has to be nice to the Russians and has to be nice to the Putin and has to respect the Putin. God forbid they do that. I'm very curious to see how the Baltic nations, how Poland, how they approach Russia if and when the U.S. ditches Project Ukraine. Oh, hey, Mr. Putin, you're so cool. Mr. Putin, you're the best. Mr. Putin, maybe we can start up that gas again? Maybe we can start up that Nord Stream pipeline? No hard feelings, Mr. Putin, no hard feelings. It was the U.S. The U.S. was telling me to do it. They are going to kiss Russia's butt if and when the U.S. Ditches Project Ukraine. If and when. Maybe the U.S. will never ditch Project Ukraine. But the Europeans, they're completely lost without the United States. And the U.S. taxpayer has to carry the EU forever. I mean, they have to support and pay for the European Union forever. What a burden that must be. What a terrible burden. So CNN, they in this article, they interviewed Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas as she was in Brussels, and she told CNN, and I quote, "We can't talk about war fatigue right now, because if we do and give in, then Putin wins, and that will mean a catastrophe to everybody. That will mean more conflicts, more wars, more scarcity of food supply, all the different worries that come along with it. So that's why we have to make an effort now. Oh boy, so there's just an EU panic. They're panicking that the US is going to leave them. That's what this article is about. They are absolutely petrified that the US is going to ditch them. Real nice sovereignty that the European Union countries have, huh? Real nice sovereignty. Oh boy. So that's why they fear Orange Man, Trump. That's why they fear Trump so much, because they're afraid that Trump is going to pull out of all of this. That's why they fear it so much. They fear the Orange Man. So things are going very, very bad on the front lines for the Ukraine military in Kupiansk, in Avdiivka, in Kherson. The Russians continue to grind down the Ukraine military. They continue to make small advances, but that's not really what any of the operations are really about at this moment. Putin, Shoigu, they've said that the Russians are still on active defense. Putin had after his Q&A, he had a roundtable meeting with various officials, and Putin told the people at this meeting that he is seeing a huge uptick in Ukraine army surrenders. Ukraine soldiers surrendering. A dramatic increase, Putin said during this meeting. And we're getting a lot of images and a lot of videos now of Ukraine military recruiters. They're actually going into nightclubs and restaurants now to find military-aged men. And the interesting part about this story is that we have Ukraine women, clubbers, Ukraine girls that are going to nightclubs. They're actually taking Instagram photos in front of the military recruiters who are trying to find guys at these nightclubs. No joke. This is how weird and twisted all of this is becoming. This is a society not in collapse, that has collapsed. And this is what's going to enter the European Union. This is going to enter the European Union. It's ridiculous. But we're seeing all these selfies now of Ukrainian girls who are going to nightclubs, and they're taking selfies, and the military recruiters are like right in back of them. It's really, really bizarre stuff. We're getting reports that they have to pass out bread now to pensioners in Ukraine because things are so bad, are so awful. It makes you wonder, where has the 200, 300, 400 billion, where's that money gone? Where has that money gone? We all know where that money disappeared to, but it obviously has not gone to the people. That's for sure. And then we have this article from The Spectator with the title, "No one wants to talk about Ukraine anymore." And I saw this Spectator article on the Twitter feed of Il Libanesi, and it's behind the paywall, but he actually pulled out some interesting parts from this article. So let me read you what this article says from The Spectator. Calls what's happening in Ukraine right now, and I quote, "a seasonal downer." A seasonal downer. That's one way to describe things. "This endgame is more likely than ever. I'm not happy about that. In fact, it makes me sick. But the average age of Ukrainian army is now 43, a statistic that makes me even sicker. They're running out of young men, not because the young men won't serve, but because they're dead. Ukrainian women are being sent to the front lines. Russia had nearly 4 times the population of Ukraine before the war. Given the reduced population in Kiev-controlled areas, the countries are now mismatched in manpower by a factor of 5. With his legacy and political future on the line, Putin is clearly all in for the long haul. The easily manipulated Russian public have not rebelled. Putin's inner sanctum hasn't staged a coup. Russian GDP has increased since last year. The ruble started rising against the dollar. Western sanctions have failed. An interesting statement from the Spectator, huh? An admission of sorts that this was all about regime change in Russia, right? And he's trying to cope with the fact that their goal of destroying Ukraine in order to engineer regime change in Russia has failed. That's basically what the author is saying here. Very, very twisted, huh? But they wanted regime change in Russia and they failed. They didn't get the inner sanctum of the Kremlin. It didn't rebel against Russia. They didn't get against Putin, against the Putin. They didn't get protests in the streets of Moscow calling for the overthrow of the Putin government. The Russian economy is 3.5% growth instead of 5% contraction, which is what they all thought was going to happen. And he's upset about that. And he's trying to hide. This is the part that really upsets me. The Spectator's trying to hide this anger at the fact that they weren't able to overthrow the Putin and balkanize Russia by making it seem like they're very upset that Ukraine is collapsing and is suffering all these losses. That's the part that's even more disgusting. They had no problem, and they have no problem, sacrificing Ukraine in order to weaken Russia. And that was the goal from the very beginning. That was the goal from the get-go. Use Ukraine, sacrifice Ukraine in order to get regime change in Russia. And then he talks about how the Russian people are manipulated by the Putin. Yeah, give me a break. So I tweeted a response to this Spectator article, especially the part where the article says, the easily manipulated Russian people. And I put together a list of collective West manipulation. I started with the Ghost of Kiev, Snake Island, Siege of Kiev, the Goat of Kiev, the Zaporozhye Avenger, the Great Kherson Offensive, the Great Kharkov Offensive. Zelensky is the next Churchill. Russia is running out of weapons. The Russian economy is in tatter. The ruble is in rubble. Who blew up Nord Stream? Washing machine chips. Russia lost 90% of its military. Russia will attack NATO. The Russian missile that allegedly landed in Poland. Ukraine has defeated the Russian Black Sea Fleet. NATO is not a party to this war. Ukraine is a sovereign nation. The Maidan Revolution of Dignity, the Minsk Accords, that biased time, according to Angela Merkel. Ukraine has fulfilled all the EU requirements. Boris Johnson in Kiev, and Zelensky running around the world constantly begging for money. Give me money, give me money, give me money, without any audit or any accountability. And then other Twitter users, they added onto my list, and they talked about the man that shot down Russian fighter jets with his rifle, and Russia is fighting Ukraine with shovels, and there are no NAZIs in Ukraine, and what else? The grandmothers who were taking down Russian drones with jars of spaghetti sauce or tomato sauce, and it's the Russian people who have been manipulated by the Putin, not the citizens of the collective West that have been manipulated by the collective West media into actually believing that Ukraine could win this conflict and that sanctions were going to lead to regime change in Russia. They haven't been manipulated. It's the Putin that's manipulating the Russians. So let's see, how are we doing on time? Have I been rambling too much? So I've got some time left. So Macron responded to Putin's comment at the Q&A, where Putin was like, if France wants to call us, that's fine. If they don't, we don't care. And Macron, he said, if President Putin has a willingness to engage in dialogue and serious proposals to move forward and emerge from the conflict and build a lasting peace, that is to say, one that respects international law and therefore Ukrainian interests and sovereignty, I'll take the call, Macron said, adding, I haven't changed my number. So whatever comes out of Macron's mouth, just don't even take it seriously. Macron is the ultimate flip-flopper. That's Macron. But you know, France and Germany, they were supposed to make sure that the Minsk agreements were adhered to. They signed up to the Minsk agreements, and they were supposed to make sure that Minsk was adhered to by the Poroshenko and the Zelensky regime, and they didn't do that. They did not do that, and so whatever Macron says about international law and human rights or any stuff like that, just don't buy into it. Don't buy into it. There's no way that Putin's gonna be calling Macron. What's gonna happen is that Macron, when and if the U.S. ditches Project Ukraine on Europe, you better believe it, that Macron is going to be calling up Putin 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Put money on it. And Macron also said that Ukraine is still very far from EU membership. He also said that the other day. The EU will need to substantially reform its rules before Ukraine can join, French President Macron told reporters. Macron backs Kiev's accession to the bloc, but warned that Ukraine must not be allowed to undercut EU industry. The EU will need to substantially reform its rules before Ukraine can join. Interesting, huh? The EU is going to have to change its rules in order to let Ukraine join, because Macron talks about Ukraine's economy. What economy? What economy are you talking about? What they're going to do is they're going to create some sort of government, and when all this is said and done, they're going to create a government and for Ukraine, and that'll be a government in exile, and that'll be the government that's part of the European Union. That's what's going to happen. That's going to be the end game to all of this, and they're going to prop up this government in exile for however long they need to prop it up. However long the money keeps flowing, that's how long they'll prop up this government in exile. Kind of like a Juan Guaido kind of scenario. And they'll say that's the government, that's the real government of Ukraine, and that's the government that's part of the EU. And that government in exile will attend all of the EU meetings and all of the EU events. And they'll go on with this charade for however long the EU is in existence. Lavrov, he said the other day while he was in Belarus, he said that multiple Western leaders had approached him about potential negotiations to end the conflict in Ukraine, saying the Kremlin is ready for dialogue so long as it respects Moscow's core interests. I do not want to, and I have no right to name names, but a number of high-level, well-known leaders of Western countries, including one specific Western leader, a very well-known one, several times, at least via 3 different channels of communication, sent signals as to why don't we meet and talk about what to do with Ukraine and with European security. That is what Lavrov said. You know who that Western leader was? Macron. That would be my guess. That would be my guess. Don't believe anything that comes out of Macron's mouth. He says one thing today, he means something else tomorrow, or he says or does something else tomorrow. He says all of this stuff about being open to dialogue with Russia while he continues to fund the Banderites in Ukraine. Don't believe anything he says. Anyway, let's now move on to what's going on in the Red Sea with the Yemen Houthis hitting ships that pass through the Red Sea, including cargo ships belonging to Maersk or Hapag-Lloyd, which are carrying cargo. And these ships now have, these companies that have these cargo ships, they have actually now had to reroute this cargo because of the fear that the Houthis are going to hit these ships. And the Houthis do this in order to stop supplies to the military, the Israeli military. And they're sending a message. They're sending a message about the conflict in Israel and in Gaza. And I want to read you a tweet from Jennifer Gnana. Quote, repeated attacks by Yemen's Houthis militia along the Bab al-Mandeb route have left global shipping companies shunning the critical choke point amid rising costs and increasing geopolitical risk in one of the world's biggest choke points for seaborne trade. And she put out a map, Suez Canal versus the Cape of Good Hope shipping routes. And this map says the typical Singapore to Rotterdam sea voyage is almost 40% longer via the Cape compared to the Suez Canal. So going via the Suez is 8,440 nautical miles. But now all these ships, these Maersk cargo ships, they have to be rerouted along the Cape of Good Hope, and that's 11,720 nautical miles. So if this continues, I imagine that the collective West is going to be pressured to do something about this. But what are they going to do? What could they do to prevent the Yemen Houthis from continuing to prevent cargo ships and ships with military weapons, to prevent them from moving through the Red Sea? What is the collective West? What is the United States going to do if they start getting pressure from these big shipping companies, or if they start to see prices rising again because of the cost of having to go around, the cargo cost? We'll see. I think this is a story that we really need to watch. Anyway, we had an incident in Israel yesterday, in Gaza, Israel yesterday, where the IDF, they killed 3 Israeli hostages, and they thought that the hostages were suicide bombers. But these were Israeli hostages that they ended up killing 3. And the army, the IDF, has come out with a statement, and they have said that they bear full responsibility for the deaths of these people. The Israeli Defense Forces has said it accidentally killed 3 Israeli nationals taken hostage by Hamas, explaining that the tragic error occurred in a Gaza neighborhood where troops had come under heavy fire. And a lot of people poured onto the streets in Israel, protesting this event, outraged at this event, the fact that the Israeli military killed 3 Israelis, thinking they were hostages, and thinking they were suicide bombers when in fact they were hostages. And this has prompted Netanyahu to start opening up dialogue with Hamas to try and secure the release of all the hostages. And this is an important development. So Dan Cohen, he put out a post saying, update, Netanyahu reversed course and allowed his Mossad head to go to Qatar to negotiate with Hamas after the IDF killed 3 Israeli captives in Gaza. Hamas has maintained its position in favor of a ceasefire and negotiations since soon after October 7th. Israel has been changing its position. It's obvious which side is winning strategically. And Axios, they put out a story with the title, Scoop, Israel's Mossad chief expected to meet Qatari PM to resume hostage talks. Why does it matter? According to Axios, it would be the first meeting between senior Israeli and Qatari officials since the collapse of the 7-day ceasefire, which led to the expansion of the Israeli military operation to southern Gaza. Israel's return to the table suggests it is ready to try to explore a new hostage deal. The previous deal was derailed 2 weeks ago after Hamas refused to release the remaining women it is holding hostage. Hamas blamed Israel for the collapse and said the women Israel proposed be released were IDF soldiers. So this tragic development has pushed Netanyahu to now seek negotiations with Hamas in order to secure the release of the hostages. It's a big development, a very big development. Netanyahu, he's running out of road to keep this war going, or at least to keep the intensity of this war going. But we'll see. We will see what happens from this negotiation between Israel and Qatar and Hamas, and we'll see if this will lead to another ceasefire. Let's see what happens. I think this is a big development. Anyway, let's do some clown worlds, I guess. Let's do some clown worlds. Before I get into the clown worlds, how about the report that's Facebook Meta founder CEO, the Zuckbot, Mark Zuckerberg, is building a top secret Hawaii doomsday bunker with blast-resistant door. Interesting story, a 5,000 square foot underground shelter equipped with his own energy and food supplies. This is being constructed by the Zuckbot in Hawaii, and all the builders of this bunker, they've signed like a non-disclosure agreement, and they can't talk about this bunker. But it's going to be super high tech, and it makes you wonder, why is the Zuckbot? Why are all of these billionaires, these super multi-rich billionaires, why are they building bunkers in remote places around the globe? Makes you wonder, huh? Are they afraid of something? Do they know something that we don't? Anyway, I thought that was an interesting story from the Zuckbot. So Maloney, she is now we're into clown world territory. Maloney is now taking credit for telling Orban to get a cup of coffee during the EU accession talks for Ukraine. Yesterday, Politico said that it was Orban, that it was Schultz that told Orban to step out of the room and go get some coffee before they voted on accession talks for Ukraine. It was the brilliant idea of German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Now Maloney is saying, no, Schultzy. That was my idea. I'm the one that that told Orban to leave the room so that we can vote at allowing Project Ukraine into the European Union. What a joke. Schultz is, what a joke Maloney has turned out to be. What a joke. Unbelievable. And she was going to be the savior of Italy, the patriotic Italy first prime minister, and she's turned into a pathetic shill for the EU, for the globalists, and for NATO, and for Project Ukraine. Unbelievable. Anyway, that's my clown world. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and we are also on Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. Use the code GOODDAY. 20. No, not good day. Use the code the Duran20 and get 20% off all merchandise. There's a fountain right there, which is maybe some of the background noise that maybe you heard in this video, maybe not. Let's walk to the fountain and I'll show you, just so you see where I am. There we are. And this cafe is called By the Bridge. By the bridge, under the bridge, as the Red Hot Chili Peppers famously sang. All right, everybody, that's the video. Take care.